Keep the conversation going. It was a mantra we here at Solex Thermal Science have embraced since our world was thrown into the chaos of a pandemic. In June 2020, we launched The Exchange, a series of virtual roundtables with experts from around the world who have shared valuable insights into industries, regions, and more. And while our goal was simply to keep the conversation going, we've discovered it to be so much more. These conversations have uncovered inspiring examples of innovation in technology, of resilience in the face of market volatility, and of cooperation. For this, our 14th episode of The Exchange, we'd like to focus on one of the more dominant themes, that being ESG, or environmental, social, and governance. From China to South America, and potash to cocoa, ESG is having a profound impact on the way we are all doing business. Here are just some of those insights into how.
We've always placed a high value on carbon in our world. In that, for example, if you look at the coal business, the oil and gas business, it's all carbon. And we're really just changing how we look at carbon these days. So I think the value of carbon is still there, and in the process of finding ways to reduce those emissions, there's some really neat solutions being developed, looking at ways to get there, and that's really where the fun stuff is happening.
Yeah, so I think with the number of technologies and even better practices that are coming to the forefront now, you're starting to see people realizing that rather than just considering this to be a waste product, let's utilize it as a resource and build on
it. It kind of came together quickly when BlackRock said that carbon is real to the letter to the CEOs. When they told the CEOs that we're going to be looking at your carbon number, and if you want our trillions, you need to have a carbon number, carbon story figured out.
Sure.
Well, that really impressed the CEOs of all the resource sector companies fairly quickly, who then they started looking at their carbon number, and then so they look at what they're doing, but then they turn around and look at the supply chain, which is us. So there's a parade coming. And so with this parade, we have a choice. We can be in front of it, in it, behind it, or under it. We thought, let's get in front of it. So as an association, we created a carbon calculator for the industrial and mining supply chain. Once it becomes mandated by the mining companies or oil producers, that the first level will be, probably the first iteration will be, do you have a carbon number, yes or no? What is it? Share it. It won't be rated. They're just going to be pass fail. Do you have one? Yep. The next thing will be, you have a carbon number. Okay, now we're going to start rating you against others, but they can't really start doing that, I think, until they get a better idea of where's everybody at.
We've started seeing that a request for providing the carbon number from some of our clients, and I'm really glad. And believe me, after this conversation, I will jump on Simsa website to take a look at your calculator before you made it paid. So and compare it to data that we had to come up with a number, and we were simply asked the question.
The ESG conversation has rolled through multiple sectors like a giant tsunami during the pandemic. And that's been critically important for service providers to pay attention to, and perhaps potentially step up their game in terms of how to think through their own ESG strategies, and quite practically speaking, not only for the stakeholders that they serve, but ultimately it'll be the quality of your ESG thinking that gets you to the top of the preferred vendor list when you're dealing with a lot of clients. So,
yeah, let's say the service providers have to demonstrate to their clients, their customers, that they're fulfilling the values of their clients and customers, and this is just let's say part of that journey. And are service companies seeing this? Yes, absolutely. Here at Solex, we've actually had some of our customers come to us and ask us to specifically fill out what we are doing on an ESG front. This is very recent. Just in the last 6 months, this has started happening. But no surprise that it is happening.
The recent 2020 Cocoa Barometer was pretty scathing in its report on sustainability progress in the cocoa industry. And I quote, one of the lines in there was, "Good intentions combined with a lack of accountability."
ECA companies individually, but also through multi-stakeholder approach, have a strong commitment and had a strong commitment during the last years to take action to monitor, prevent, mitigate, and remedy adverse human rights and environmental impacts of their cocoa on their own operation in their supply chains. This is for us the meaning of due diligence. Our members clearly support the introduction of a mandatory regulation, a mandatory due diligence legislation. And this will include mandatory targets and compliance by all the actors in the supply chain. Our association, ECA, has been very vocal on this on the past years.
You know, how is that drive for improved efficiency linked with producers wanting to be more sustainable, particularly around reducing plant emissions and reducing energy consumption and that kind of stuff?
Obviously, the regulations in different jurisdictions, you have different regulations. We see, especially in Europe, that the environmental protection regulations are normally quite more strict than in other areas, and companies based in Europe need to comply with those regulations. Second aspect is the cost. There's a global economy nowadays, and there's competition everywhere. And obviously, the producers need to be efficient to reduce their costs, and the energy is one of them. So whenever you can, utilize waste energy or recover energy in your process, you're saving costs.
There's a couple of things that Go has mentioned already just in our conversation, mentioned working with a lithium-ion battery manufacturing line in Thailand, and then mentioned, looking at biofuel production from palm oil. And those are both kind of in the same vein of this great global kind of ESG awakening, if you want to think about it. Companies are becoming more concerned about their environmental footprint, the energy intensity of their processes. And at the end of the day, there is movement afoot in the petrochemical industry. Change is in the air. And I think that anytime that there's big changes like that, like I say, the big ESG drive, really that the whole, seismic shift towards electrification of transport, especially, but really electrifying everything. Yeah. Those are just huge challenges. And one of the things that can help with is it kind of gives a shake to those conservative industries, those very conservative plants, those very, just conservative markets, and says, hey, you got to wake up and you got to try something different. And that, I think, is a really great opportunity as well as a great challenge.
The petrochemical industry is a bit conservative industry, but though such kind of an industry, we are finding out a few users, they're trying to find a way for carbon footprint, carbon neutral. So luckily, we are finding out such kind of the customers very positive towards ESG, the SDGs campaign. So I hope that is a change.
What are sugar production facilities today to reduce their carbon footprint, and maybe perhaps a bit more specifically to the sugar beet industry? How is it going to adapt to increasing regulatory constraints?
To reduce the carbon footprint, I should say that the first action that is made by sugar factories, it is to switch from coal to gas, natural gas. The second thing is during the transport of the beets. there are a lot of efforts that are made to reduce the emissions of CO2 by the lorries.
Maybe if I may add, even more and more they try to pre-clean the beet in the field, which has the advantage you will not transport all the mud to the plant and coming back, and they try to remove as much as the mud stick to the beet on the spot.